I didn't know it then. We call it today the Big Listen. And that's how we started my term in elected office in Hinton.
Albertans can see themselves reflected in our existing set of policies.
We have to move on past the 20th century politics that have dominated this province for so long.
The Alberta Party should be the entity that tries to recapture the heritage of consensus government that we have in this province.
I think about $10,000.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the beginning of our Calgary Leadership Forum series on the future of Alberta leadership candidates. If you'd like to take your seat, gentlemen and lady. My name is Brian Lee, and I am president of the Calgary Leadership Forum. History very much is alive in our time. Since Alberta was founded 106 years ago, we have only had 13 premiers, and we are in the process of rethinking and choosing our 14th premier. Who is it going to be? Is it going to be from one of the established parties, or is it going to be from the brand new Alberta Party? Interestingly, Albertans, when they've changed governments, have never changed to the second party in control. They've always gone to a brand new political party. They did it with United Farmers, they did it with Social Credit, and they did it with the Progressive Conservatives. Thus far, we've had 3 UFA premiers, 3 Liberal premiers, 3 Social Credit premiers, 4 PC premiers, and is one of the next premiers sitting at this table? I am dying to know, and I'm guessing you all are as well. We do have a tradition of beginning with O Canada, so I'm going to ask Ann Souza and Bruce Lee to come forward. Would you all please stand and lead us in the singing of O Canada?
We're going to do this in 4/4 time, so it's going to be fast. Just kidding.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all thy sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land, glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Play ball.
I wanted to hear the horns.
What we lacked in being on key, we made up in remembering the words. I am proud of you all. Thank you so much, Bruce and Ann. I'll bring you back for the rest of the series. There's going to be a 5-minute opening statement by each of the candidates, and followed by question and answer period. Glenn, you have the lectern.
Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you to the Leadership Forum for hosting this event this afternoon. Democracy is best served when it's contested. And even when the 4 of us are on a similar journey and modeling the similar values that many of you here in this room show, democracy is best served when it's contested. And so I'd like to acknowledge and recognize my fellow candidates for putting themselves forward for consideration, because I believe that we have 4 amazing choices in front of us to be asked to serve in the leadership capacity of this party moving forward as we build a 21st century for Alberta. But I'm going to begin by telling you a little bit about who I am. 30 years ago, I moved to Alberta. I came here to ski, actually, shortly after finishing high school. I spent 6 glorious years in Lake Louise, and when it was time for me to settle down and get on with my life, I chose to move to Hinton, a little community nestled in the eastern slopes of the Rockies, just outside of Jasper, where I could settle down and raise a family. There I found work as a laborer in the local sawmill, and through night school and distance learning I became a power engineer and a health and safety specialist. I found a wife there that I very much love dearly today, very supportive of my activities, and I have 2 wonderful children. My daughter Kelsey is a nurse, and my son is following his dream, living at the base of a ski hill in southern Alberta. 10 years ago, my community found themselves in trouble. We were facing the challenges of communities that rely on natural resource-based economies that we see right across this province. And for this community that had served me so well and treated me so well, I offered myself for service to the community and ran for council. 3 years after that, I was asked to serve as mayor, and I've been re-elected as mayor twice since then. And I ran on a platform of renewing democracy and rebuilding pride in our community. For so many years, we've been known as this stinky little pulp mill town that you drive through on the way to Jasper. And we weren't feeling the pride that's necessary to reflect where we came from and an understanding of what we could be. So I ran on a platform of renewing democracy by talking and listening to citizens and asking them what their hopes and dreams and aspirations are for the future of our community. We invited 150 citizens out the first time we did this. And based on what we heard, we developed a strategic plan. And with that strategic plan, we put together a 20-year capital plan and then prioritized what we'd heard from our community. I didn't know it then. We call it today the Big Listen. And that's how we started my term in elected office in Hinton. Based on what we heard, we put together a budget. And in the past 9 years, we've systematically ticked off every one of the priorities that we'd identified during that time in Hinton of what that community wanted to be based on listening to the citizens. Last October, we had 1,800 citizens engaged in the process as we developed a 30-year community sustainability plan. What I'm suggesting to you is this idea of developing policy based on listening in an authentic and meaningful fashion to the citizens of this province. I bring that experience and offer it to the Alberta Party because we've done that on a micro level in my community, and I know we can do this on a macro level for the citizens of the province, and we can do that by working together and listening. In November of 2009, I attended a conference in Red Deer called Reboot, and it was there that I met many others that shared this concern for democracy in Alberta. Matter of fact, we came there to discuss democracy and offer solutions for change. It was there that I met Chima and Nahed Nenshi, Chris Labossiere, Sue Huff, people from rural Alberta like Connie Jensen and Edwin Erickson who had come together to discuss this need, this yearning for change, for a rebirth of democracy. And it was actually over a table in a pub that this idea where we were discussing this myth of the rural-urban divide, that we found more that joins us than separates us. And it was there that the seed of this idea of a rebirth of democracy by reinvigorating the Alberta Party and offering a viable alternative for the next provincial election was born. I worked with this group through March when they got together and decided that they could form this new Alberta Party. And then in November of 2010, we came together after a series of big listens across the province, thousands of kilometers through people's living rooms and kitchens, that we came together to put together the policy for the foundational policy of this newly reborn Alberta Party. And that's when I bought my membership, because I saw that the words match the actions, and the actions are leading to a new opportunity here in Alberta. My experience as the Urban Municipality Association's Vice President, as well as Chair of Rural Alberta's Development Fund, a not-for-profit corporation funded with $100 million to find good ideas and build capacity in rural Alberta, I've traveled relentlessly around this province in the past 7 years, listening to Albertans, helping them build change and alternatives, and funding their needs. My peers asked me to serve them as their representative of the Urban Municipalities Association, where I advocated on behalf of our villages, towns, and cities from across this province to provincial government. And that's the experience and the background and the knowledge, the connections and the network that I'm offering to this fledgling young party, if you would choose to ask me to serve you as your leader. And I ask you to join me on this journey as we go through May 28th and select a new leader for a new party, for a new Alberta. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Glenn. Tammy Maloney, please.
Thank you all for coming, and thanks to Brian and the Calgary Leadership Forum for putting on this great event and giving you a chance to get to know all of us a little bit better. During my campaign, I've traveled more than 15,000 kilometers across this amazing province and really had a chance to deepen my relationship with Albertans. And what I've discovered is that all paths in Alberta can lead to the Alberta Party. And this is because Albertans are searching for something, and everything they're looking for can be found in the Alberta Party's policies and principles and our passionate people. My specific path has come through a very rural and urban and global experience. I've spent 25 of my 40 years bringing people together in order to effect positive change. and the success that I've had globally is coming through my passion and my authentic love of people and my joy in solving problems. So in 2006, I left a 10-year career in the oil and gas industry in order to commit to using my passions and strengths to ending poverty. And I know that this sounds like a grand vision, but I like to think big. And I moved to Spain to attend business school, and I got a master's in business where I focused on social entrepreneurship, how to use business to address social issues. I, after graduation, joined the Clinton Foundation in Nigeria and as Chief Operating Officer. And then in 2008, I returned home and started working with the homeless community here in Calgary. And what I've learned is that poverty actually comes in many more forms. I was initially focused on financial poverty, but poverty can come in the form of spiritual poverty or emotional poverty or even physical poverty in the form of poor health. So a couple years ago, I changed my goal and I decided that I really wanted to try and create opportunities for wealth and health and happiness and meaningful work for all people. And this is why I'm so incredibly inspired by the Alberta Party, because I think that this is the opportunity that the Alberta Party represents. If we, all of us, work together to develop strong relationships with Albertans, and it has to be a trusting and two-way relationship. And if we also use a balanced approach to develop a holistic and integrated set of policies, this will move Alberta towards a shared vision of wealth and health and happiness for all people. So that's my path to the Alberta Party, but how are other people finding us and what is attracting them to our party? Well, it is our principles, and it is our policy, and it is our passionate people. With respect to our principles, the Alberta Party represents a balanced approach. We are moving Alberta from the divisive and dualistic thinking towards holistic and unified thinking. The Alberta Party believes that we can have a strong private sector and a responsive public sector. We know how to compete and collaborate, and we know that we should be striving for individual achievement and strong communities. And I'm really proud of our policies, because what I've discovered is that Albertans can see themselves reflected in our existing set of policies. In Alberta, we believe we're all in this together. We want public health care. We want our MLAs to be able to represent their communities based on their differing needs. And our existing policy brings this to the table. But what the Alberta Party is going to do that is going to differentiate it from all of the other parties is that we understand that policy, in the absence of a trusting and two-way relationship with Albertans, is just words on a page. The last thing I'd like to talk about is passion and our people. If you think about it, almost every other person you see on the street doesn't vote. And it isn't policy and principles that are going to bring them to the Alberta Party and re-engage them in the democratic process. People want to be inspired. They want to feel like they're a part of something. And this is what I can bring to the Alberta Party. My passion for our people, for my fellow candidates, for our province, and for what we represent is contagious. So with my leadership, we can work together to bring a balanced approach that will develop a holistic and integrated set of policies that are going to lead Alberta towards a vision of wealth and health and meaningful work and happiness for all people. We're going to continue building this trusting and two-way relationship with Albertans, and we're going to use our passion to tap into that explosive growth that awaits the Alberta Party, and we can win the next election. Thank you.
Tammy. Lee Easton, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, first of all, to the other candidates. I have grown to respect and admire each of the other candidates, and I don't actually envy your choice. I want to thank you for coming on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon when there are lots of other things to do in a very busy world. So thanks so much for coming out tonight. Today, sorry, I'm all over the place at the moment. I want to talk to you a little bit about why I've decided to come to the Alberta Party and what attracted to me first. Then I want to talk a little bit about what I have done in the past and what I think I have to offer to this particular party. I think we are all aware that we're in a bit of a stalemate in this province right now. We have a government who's become more concerned with managing others and managing to stay in power than to listening to people. We know that we have an opposition that seems pretty stuck in its ways too. And so for that reason, when I've been looking around for an alternative to that situation, I finally found the Alberta Party, and it really spoke to me. And it spoke to me primarily because it speaks about the future. It seemed to me that when I started to really investigate the Alberta Party, that it was trying to do politics differently, and it was doing so because it talked about dreams. And I saw in its history that it really was and is, I think, a kind of dream machine. We had a group of people, committed people, who came together and said, you know what, we need a political alternative in this province. And they dreamed of establishing a political party, and that party is the Alberta Party. But that wasn't where they stopped, right? They dreamt even bigger. They said, hey, what if we bring all the people from Alberta, from every political stripe together and talk about the future of the province and what we can do differently, and what would that bring about? That brought about the Big Listen, which is now the core of how we're doing politics differently in this province. Now it's dreaming even bigger. It's dreaming of forming the next government, and I believe that it can do that. And it needs to do that because we have to move on past the 20th century politics that have dominated this province for so long. We need a new way to do things, and the Alberta Party is offering it. I like Sue Huff's comment when in her most recent video, and I'm going to say it because I think we all ought to practice it. We are not a spoon-feeding, pulpit-preaching, sham-wow, daddy knows best kind of party. We are a party that believes not only in the three prepositions of government, of, by, and for the people, but most importantly, we're adding a fourth preposition. That's with the people. And we're going to go out, and we've been engaging Albertans in that conversation about how we're going to do things differently with them. How we're going to continue to do the kind of listening that has produced the policies that we already have in the future policies that will be ready for the election. I know many people are concerned that we're not going to have those policies, but guess what? We will be ready. We will have policies that speak to the majority of Albertans because we know the majority of Albertans are moderate centrist people. That's the foundation of this party. That's why we're here, I believe, today. You'd be, I think, wise to ask me, why me? Why Lee Easton? Let me tell you a bit about that. First of all, you know that I've come from Ontario. I was born in a hard rock mining town called Sudbury, Ontario. Some of you may remember it as the nickel capital of the world. Others of you will remember it was used in the 1960s to practice moonscapes. It's moved on way beyond that through a large amount of work with the major employers in that area and government to reforest that whole area, revegetate it. I went to Hamilton, another industrial city, went and did my MA, my BA there, and then I moved here to Alberta almost 20 years ago, and I haven't really looked back since. Alberta's been incredibly good to me. I've had great opportunities. As you know, I work at Mount Royal University now, Canada's newest, oldest university. It's kind of interesting, right? Paradoxical. We are new, but we have been around for over 100 years now. It's great. I've been there helping change that institution from the community college base that it started when I went there in 1996. And then more recently have been involved in that process as an administrator. I've been involved in collective bargaining there for a long time, and I learned from that process the need for
being able to look for win-win situations, for working together in order to bring about common change. I've also had some experience in the private sector. I served on the Apex Credit Union Board, where we opened financial services in parts of this city where there were no financial services, or at least of limited range. I also helped spearhead the merger with Service Credit Union, you may know something about. Over the last 10 years at Mount Royal University, as we moved from a college to a university, we've had to do some collective thinking about how do we move things together? How do we move things on? And being a part of that process, I think I bring that to this particular party. Working collegially and collectively together to achieve a common goal is something that I've been doing for over a decade. It brought the same set of skills to the to the Apex Credit Union when it merged with Service. And that too was challenging because there were lots of different interests at play. I also believe that we need a fresh new voice to go out and speak to Albertans about the story of the Alberta Party, to talk about why we are the alternative, why we are going to represent this future that we all want for Alberta. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee. Randy Roy, please.
You guys need a joke. So I'm going to tell one. I'll chew up 1 minute of my time to tell that joke. It's been great traveling around the province, as my colleagues have. And what ends up happening is you end up telling the same story over and over again. So it reminded me of that joke that the guy joins a fishing party. And every year that fishing party has been going to the same fishing trip, and the guys have known each other for years. And so he joins that fishing party, and the guys were sitting around the fire, and someone would yell out, "Number 42," and everybody would laugh and laugh and laugh. Have you heard this joke? And so anyways, everybody would laugh at 42, and then somebody else would yell at number 22, and everybody, and everybody would laugh. And so he talks to his buddy, says, "What's going on here? Normally people tell jokes. You guys are just yelling out numbers." He says, "Well, we've been doing this for so long that we tell the same jokes over and over again. And so the guys just yell out the number, and everybody remembers the joke, and that's what we're laughing at." So the guy kind of gets comfortable, and he says, "Well, I'm going to see how it goes." So everybody's talking, and he yells out, "Number 11." Everybody just kind of looks at him. He says, "Well," says to his buddy afterwards, "I yelled out number 11, and nobody laughed." He says, "Well, some people can tell a joke, some people can't." Anyways, Brian, thank you very much for having us. Thank you to the Croatian Society for hosting us here. Thank you to my esteemed colleagues with a tremendous amount of talent. Thank you for coming, for those of you from the Alberta Party, and for those of you that are interested in the Alberta Party. Thank you very much. What I'm going to be telling you today is basically how to frame this discussion about who should be the leader of this party. And with the qualities that we have up here, it's almost unfortunate there has to be one single leader. And it's also unfortunate that the members of the Alberta Party actually have to vote for a single leader. But it is also an opportunity to frame that discussion. So that's what I'm going to try to do in my little talk today. I'm going to tell you my proposal about what the Alberta Party should be in terms of its strategic position, and then quite frankly how I would fit into that as the leadership candidate. So first of all, and I will also say that in terms of that discussion of strategic position, it's also about each one of us needs to present a form of reconciliation. It's a reconciliation of the dreams that we have versus the realities that we confront. It's the reconciliation of a wonderful dream that is the Alberta Party, and how do we actually make it happen. So having said that, I'd like to first talk about the strategic position that I propose. I would like to suggest that the Alberta Party should be the entity that tries to recapture the heritage of consensus government that we have in this province. As Brian kind of alluded to, we have changed government. In 106 years, we've changed government 3 times. And each one of those times, we moved to a consensus-style party. Peter Lougheed's Conservatives, the Social Credit in 1935, and then the United Farmers of Alberta, the UFA, in 1920. Each one of those parties started off their existence as a consensus party. Now, each one of them, regrettably, in their second and third generation of leadership, lost that consensus, and that's where we are today. The Conservatives have lost that consensus. So I'm proposing the Alberta Party regain that. Now, in being a consensus party, that means you are, as my colleagues have said, you are at the base of what Albertans think. And I would propose that the way Albertans think in general is that we are socially caring and we are financially prudent. So that's how I would like to describe our party. The final thing is that how do we fit amongst our competitors? And I would suggest that we position ourselves as being the party that presents bold and viable innovation in politics. Now, you compare that to the Conservatives, who really have to be a continuation of what we are. They really can't vary too far from that. As much as they might say they're changing direction, they really can't be, and you know what, the people need to have that choice. The Wild Rose, on the other hand, they're a dogmatic party, and they're importing a lot of dogma to Alberta, and that's what they are. We get to be that homegrown innovation that we have already started in this party. Secondly, I guess I'd like to talk a little bit about who am I and how do I fit in. And I'd like to describe myself a little bit. I am really the typical Albertan. I'm not a big name politician, and I'll point out, interestingly enough, that on each one of those three changes in government, none of them were big name politicians. Peter Lougheed had some following, if you will, in Calgary, but I was from Lethbridge, and I remember nobody knew who Peter Lougheed was. Before that, the social credit movement, they had a series of people that were strong, and the UFA actually didn't even have a leader when they swept the province. They asked 3 people to become leaders, and it could have been these 3 people, and each one of them turned them down. It was the 4th person that they asked to form the leader was actually the guy that formed the leadership. So my roots are deep in Alberta. Both of my great-grandfathers homesteaded in the Edmonton area. One in Fort Saskatchewan, and the other one actually named Beaumont. I'm also that combination of sort of urban and rural. I worked on the family farm when I was young and a ranch, which was a great joy. And so I have dirt underneath my fingernails, if you will. But I've also done urban planning. I was in the hotel business, and one of my great successes was the Grand Okanagan Resort in Kelowna, and we actually won urban planning awards for that property. So I've done kind of both. I'm also entrepreneurial, and like Tammy, I've got a social bent on my entrepreneurialism. I had an education at the University of Western Ontario, the Ivy Business School, and I also have been a student of democracy and wrote a book on the subject of participatory democracy, which I published 3 years ago. So I, like many Albertans, are that strange kind of combination of juxtapositions that give this province its strength. So what do I propose for the party? The first thing is that I think we need to focus in on our guiding principles. And I would like to propose that our guiding principles, and many of which I've already seen in the party, and I've enjoyed joining the party from the perspective of having those common principles, is number 1, we trust in people. That's very important, and I've seen it time and time again. Number 2 is that people and the planet are paramount. Those are the things that really count. Everything above that is transitory, and what we really need to take care of is people and the planet. The third thing is that what we need to do as a party and we need to do as a government is engage, enable, and empower. The fourth thing is that we need to appreciate our abundance, and the fifth thing is what I like to say is that the currency of government is the happiness of its people. That's what we're here for. So what does that all mean? It means that in terms of reconciliation, of taking these great dreams that I hear time and time again in the Alberta Party, we need to actually turn that into a game plan. And that game plan has to mean that we would take power in this government, in this province, and we need to transition it so that we can let those dreams come alive. So what does that mean? I will tell you that on my website, I've got a series of what I call vision of implementation. And I won't go through those now, but you can all reach in there and take a look at it. The essence of that is practical changes in various things throughout our democracy, through our economy, that can actually let people take control of what we're doing. The final thing that I would like to talk about, and hopefully I'm not too far over the 5 minutes, is our actual game plan that starts on May 29th. I, for one, am ready to roll up my sleeves and be engaged on a full-time basis. And I recognize that this is not a paying job. But what the leader does have to do is he's got to roll up his sleeves and attend to things in detail and be that practical person that changes the party from dream to reality. The first thing that I will be doing if I get the opportunity to be elected by you as leader is to go out and raise capital. We need to get this endeavor appropriately funded. So there'll be a capital raise. The second thing is that we've got to go out and get a platform on the internet that will allow us to increase the big listen to a huge listen. And we've got to invite people from across the province to participate. That's what will engage them. And finally, then we start building our constituencies, and then we start attracting more people into the party, and we'll go from there. We have 300 days from May 29th to what will probably be the election. I think we have to leave the convention on May 29th with a specific game plan. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the questions.
Well, thank you.
We have separated all your questions into various categories because there are so many that go under the same types of categories. One of the questions that has been asked is in regard to the oil and gas industry. And I think to be fair, we're going to give a minute for each one of the candidates to answer. And so the question is, what is your vision for the oil and gas energy sector?
Well, this makes it much more difficult to copy off your guys' answers, so I'll give it a shot. I believe, and the Alberta Party, quite frankly, believes, that the opportunity to use the current energy economy to transition to a 21st new energy economy is a responsibility that we all have to accept. I believe that it can be fostered within a better regulatory framework. One of the challenges that this province has faced is not a very good understanding of the framework that they're asked to work within. And this expectation that the energy industry can regulate itself, and then somehow we're surprised when the environmental challenges are not quite met by the industry, shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. It's kind of like having the pharmaceutical industry regulate it itself, and then when they release drugs onto the market a little early, we're surprised by the results of the drugs not quite living up to their potential. What I'm suggesting to you is that it's government's responsibility to put together the regulatory framework that the industry works within, and that private industry then can find ways to maintain their responsibility to continue to return a profit to their shareholders working within a framework that's enforced by government. Because in Alberta, the economy, the environment, and energy are not three separate discussions. And they shouldn't be regulated by three separate ministries that are not in consultation with each other. We have to think differently about a new energy economy for Alberta. And I would suggest to you that we've got the resources here in this province where we can use our petrochemical industry to transition to a hydrocarbon economy. If we decide that's the future for this province, we define the outcomes, we have expectations of measurement, and then we ensure that public service does their job to ensure that we get there together once we understand what it is we're looking to be.
I would concur that we need a much clearer and regulatory framework so that everybody knows what the rules are and can abide by them. I think there's another thing that has to go along with that is we have to have appropriate audit and compliance measures in place. We need to know that what leaves Site A that arrives intact and in total into Site B. We need to make certain that we have got the ability to ensure that the regulations we already have are being followed. That's really crucial. I think we also need to remember we've got to work with our oil industry partners to try to think about how we can help them reduce the number or the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that are associated with some of the developments that we know are happening up north. We need to be thinking really clearly around how we use our royalty system to encourage and incentivize people, our industry partners, to move in that direction. And again, I think that the key here is clarity and partnerships.
Thanks, Lee. The way I understand the question, it's about the oil and gas industry. How do you make that prosper is the way I understand it.
The question actually was, what is your vision for the oil and gas energy sector?
oil and gas energy sector. So the first thing I would like to suggest is that the oil and gas energy sector, we need to, as Alberta Party, we need to approach it from the perspective we're going to help. And in helping them, we will be asking them to help us address environmental issues and social issues. So it'll be a cooperative approach, as Lee said. Second thing is that the oil and gas sector is actually a couple of different industries. It's at least two. Oil is very different than gas. And I would suggest that even oil is divided into regular oil and oil mining in the north. I didn't use the T word, did I? The first thing is in the gas sector, which is actually still struggling right now. We have a tremendous opportunity to boost the consumption of gas by converting things like transportation from oil into gas. That should be a leadership opportunity for Alberta. There isn't any reason that we should have this black haze over the city of Calgary every time we have a Chinook, when we have lots and lots of gas that can be used to propel our vehicles rather than oil. That can be a position of leadership. Sometimes I think you need to go out with one simple idea, and we will compel that. One simple idea is conversion of transportation to gas rather than oil. And then at the same time, we'll go to those companies and say, we will help you. It's good environmentally. We need your help for both the environmental issues and the social issue. And as I want to also say that part of that process is that we need to hang up a new shingle when it comes to changing the way we approach the environment and say, under new management. And those companies need to understand that, but we're going to help them, and they're going to help us.
I'm not in disagreement with anything my fellow colleagues are saying. I think how the Alberta Party already has existing policy that is progressive and addresses our energy industry. We are committed to ensuring that Alberta moves forward and is a world energy leader. We also have policy that is going to work towards transitioning coal-fired plants to natural gas. So I think the other thing I'd like to mention is that I also believe our oil and gas sector needs a champion, because we need our oil and gas sector, and it's important. And using Alberta Party values and principles of collaboration, I think we can rebuild that relationship and work as a team. Thank you.
What would you do if you are unsuccessful in your leadership bid? What will you do afterwards? And also, will you stay involved with the party if you do not win the leadership? So we'll start at this end with Tammy.
I'm going to win Calgary North Hill, soon to be Calgary Klein. We've already put a team in place, and we're growing our membership, and I'm really excited to be a part of the Alberta Party. I believe in the vision of the party, and I will do whatever it takes to help this party win the next election.
I mean, this is not an unusual question. I think it's come up every time we get together. And I will speak for myself that I have every intention of running on the west side. And also, I will also say that I have a lot of contact with Lethbridge, because that's where our family is from. And I think I can have a significant impact in southern Alberta, as Tammy is from the Vauxhall area. And I think the idea is that we all need to pitch in. What we almost need to look at is the Swiss system, where their leader can only stay for 1 year, and then you just rotate through. So unfortunately, we can't do that. But I think that there are 4 very talented people here that we need all the help we can get.
You're right, Randy. We get this question a lot. For sure, I came here for the long haul. I believe in this party. I believe in what it's doing. I think it is going to form the government of the day. I plan to run for a seat in Calgary Bow. It's a area that I have some connection to because of Apex Credit Union, where we opened the first financial services that were in that area in some time. Up until then, the access was to the Royal Bank machine, and we put in a new branch there. yeah, it's really important that we're all committed to building this party, and I certainly want to be a part of that.
Thank you, Lee. I come from the perspective that there's a time in every organization, whether it's a community, a political party, private company, where there's different leadership needed at different times during the life cycle of that organization. And my leadership style is based on building. I recognize that in my home community, my work there is done after this term in office, or if I'm successfully asked to serve as a leader of this party, because I've recognized that my best before date is up. It takes a different style of leadership for the growth of this new organization. We've accomplished the work we've set out to do in my home community. That being said, I'm running a different campaign in West Yellowhead than I am for the leadership of the Alberta Party. In my home community, we have a dedicated team of over 100 CAs, or 100 members already belonging to the Alberta Party. And working on my campaign team, separately from the leadership team, we have the past candidates from the New Democrats and the Liberals, both provincially and federally, on our board. The mayor of Grand Cache is a member of our party. My entire council have bought memberships in the Alberta Party, and our deputy mayor is the president of our constituency association. The presidents of the Chamber of Commerce for Jasper and Hinton are on our board, and the deputy mayor in Jasper is fundraising for us. We are building a winning organization in West Yellowhead. My intention is that we will have a rural representative with an urban understanding when the next provincial election is called, and I've got the team to make that happen because we're building it based on an idea that we know can be successful. So yes, I'm in it for the long haul as well.
The next question is on general policies, and there have been many cards here that say that your party is short on specifics. What are your specific policies on some specific topics? And I know you only have a minute each, but we have several here that are alluding to the fact that we're getting very general answers on several issues. So we'd like to hear some specific, what you are going to do.
It's an interesting concept that we have in the Alberta Party to have participation and engagement. It's unusual. No one's ever done it before. And so the question is how do you in fact do that? One of my positions I have on my website, I talk about the vision for implementation. And so there's some very specific ways that we can implement that. One of the specifics is that they have created this recently because of the internet and because of the social media. They've actually emerged with the science around generating decisions together collectively. And they've found that crowds can come together and they can actually create good answers. And interestingly enough, they've now found scientifically that when a crowd makes a decision together in consensus, that answer is better 10 times out of 10 than a single expert in that field. And that includes cabinet decision, by the way. And so what the Alberta Party needs to do is it needs to generate that it needs to create that platform online that will enable us to come up with some specific things and specific policies, and that will be broadly based and come up with those consensus answers. So that's why I say when we have specific implementation strategies, what we need to do first is we need to go out and raise the capital to make that happen. It's probably $100,000 to $200,000 to get that platform in place, and then we can do a big listen on a big scale. But that science will also take us to action plans. And those action plans can then be turned around and implemented. Now, I want to highlight that there's 300 days before the next election, plus or minus. So we need to get going on May 29th, and we need to have that strategy in place, and we need to have the fundraising, and then we need to open up. And that's how participatory democracy should work. Tammy was next.
Next person's answer, please.
I just want to highlight the Alberta Party policy development model. In the Alberta Party, we have a shared leadership model, and we're built on a foundation of listening. So what Randy is saying is pivotal. We have to build this infrastructure into our constituency association so that we can continue to listen. with respect to specific policies, the reason I bring this up is because in a shared leadership model in the Alberta Party, then the leader is one equal voice in that process. So we can share our ideas just like you can share your ideas with us. But at the end of the day, our policy platform is going to represent what Albertans want for our province. I am kind of tired of the criticism that we don't have specific policies, because we have amazing policies. And in my conversations with Albertans from north to south, our existing policy platform answers most of their questions. Albertans want public health care. Albertans want, not just rural Albertans, all Albertans want the rights that have been compromised in the land use bills restored. And our existing policy commits to doing this. Albertans want a water strategy. We have an excellent and progressive, holistic view on water as a precious resource in Alberta. Alberta Party is committed to local art and food and helping them to make a sustainable living. So in our existing 14-page document that's online, I think most of your questions can be answered. And the other piece of this puzzle is that the majority of Albertans still are at a place where they want to be heard. So we don't want to compromise the listening process by getting into too much detail so that we still can give these other Albertans a chance to be heard. Thank you.
I would echo what Tammy's saying. What part of every Albertan has a right to a primary health giver is not specific. I mean, that's a direct kind of policy that this party stands for. What is, again, just even on the environmental front, I mean, some very specific ideas about what we want to do on the building code in terms to make it easier to recycle grey water in residential areas. I mean, we've got very specific things that we have already thought about or in the process of thinking about. I think what this really is talking about is, one, the need and ongoing need to make certain that we remain committed to the policy process that has been established. There will be lots of pressure from all kinds of sources to try to compromise what actually takes a little bit of time. But it's worth spending the time to get it right. And we are getting it right. And we will have many, many more aspects of specific policy by the time we go to election, and I'm confident in our process. So I echo Tammy's point. We already have very specific points out there. I think that we need to talk about them more often, and then we will have more for those who feel that maybe insecure about not having specifics.
Thank you, Lee. It's been an interesting journey that I've been on over this past 6 months, because as we're having a leadership race, we're also building the membership of the Alberta Party, and I've been in a lot of living rooms and kitchens and libraries and church basements and coffee shops and the occasional pub, having these discussions with Albertans. And it occurs to me that what they're really looking for out there is democratic renewal, because that ties back to everything. And it's interesting when people are asking us about what is it you stand for, because often the first question I get in these groups that I'm meeting with is, what's the Alberta Party? And then it's often, why the Alberta Party? And then, who are you and why are you running for the leadership? And then, what did the party stand for? And it goes from there. And when I tell people that, we've actually, through the Big Listen process, developed 5 primary areas to begin our policy development process in. And then we've got over 200 volunteers that are working to define that policy. And then we have over 100 pages of detailed policy development. And that I fully expect that in the next provincial election, we will have more detailed policy than any party in the province of Alberta based on that simple concept of authentic listening to Albertans about their hopes, their dreams, and their aspirations. But the other night I was asked a question at a meet and greet that we were at, and it was, what gets your blood going, Glenn? What makes you passionate about this? And my answer was then, and it is again tonight, it's about democratic renewal. And we do have very specific policies on that. It starts from the concept that MLA's role is to be the voice of citizens in a government, not government's voice to us. So let's start from there. And let's start by increasing citizen engagement and participation in policy development. And the governance and the key is the key to re-engaging Albertans. We develop the policy based on what we heard. We implement the policy based on where it makes sense to do it. So that means driving decision-making down to a local government level, both in school boards and in healthcare. It's about decentralizing power and ensuring that the citizens that are engaged in offering those services to Albertans are involved in developing the policy that makes sense. And again, we have a lot of policy on this. But in the end, it's about this in my mind. We need to establish an open and transparent process in the selection and appointments to boards, committees, councils, and agencies, because those are our friends and neighbors that we ask to serve on our behalf and represent our issues and concerns to Albertans. And they have to be given real, viable teeth and not be a buffer between government and the citizens that we've been elected to serve. And that's a very good example of a very practical policy that the Alberta Party has already developed that speaks to my passion about democratic renewal.
Okay, thank you. How do you perceive the funding and provision of health care in the next decade? And how do we pay for it?
Thank you. That's a great question. We know healthcare is on everybody's minds. I think we need to do three things. We need to make certain that the public health care that we're committed to is sustainable over the long haul. That means that we need to go in and look for where efficiencies exist and implement those. How are we going to find those? By talking to frontline workers, nurses, doctors, nurse practitioners. We need to make certain that we're getting the right people treating the right thing at the right time in the right place. Those are really fundamental principles. Some of that is going to take time to make certain it happens, and we need to take that time so that we get it right. The last thing I think we need to do over the longer haul, and I think that the Alberta Party is already talking about this, is that our solutions are going to be long-term. That means we need to go and look at our educational system, think about how we're going to make health and wellness a focus within the educational system. It means that we need to start thinking about how we're going to take a holistic view of the services that we provide. Specifically, you could think about mental health. We have a hodgepodge right now. We need to sort that out. So I would say that in 10 years from now, we would have people accessing a system, getting the right person, looking at them at the right place at the right time, that we would be able to say we have a comprehensive mental health strategy in place and we've removed the stigmatism of mental health on a social level. And then lastly, I would say that we have an integrated system of care. That's going to take some time, and I think we need to take that time in order to do it. We've been through a whole lot of changes that have disrupted our processes in major ways.
I begin from the premise that there's already enough money in the system. We have 3.8 million citizens, give or take, in Alberta, and a $40 billion annual budget and no plan. I don't believe it's about putting more money into the process and into the system. I believe, as the Alberta Party believes, that this is really about finding efficiencies within the system by talking to the people that are on the ground delivering the services. This idea that some elected person is going to have the answers to all the questions. If you find a politician that says, I've got all the answers, don't vote for that person. Because we don't. We need to be willing to surround ourselves with the people that do, though. And that's where we'll find the ability to maintain and improve our healthcare system, by working within the system by the people that are already there. And that same principle can be applied to education, energy, the environment, all the things that we expect our government to represent our interests in. So when it comes to healthcare specifically, let's start with an understanding that it's not just the health ministry that has responsibility for health outcomes in Alberta. This idea that we've got these silos of ministries that take responsibility for their own area and we don't have integration across ministries is antiquated and outdated, and it's not the future of our province. Teaching children how to be healthier, make healthier choices in school, understanding how poverty affects health, the holistic discussion that needs to take place, and then the political will to implement begins by talking to the people that are delivering the service as well as those that need to avail themselves of the service. And I believe that we have the ability, if we understand the expected outcomes, put the measurables in place, and then systematically work our way through the system. And don't be afraid to learn from others. We don't have to invent it new here in Alberta, but we do have to get it better. And I think that's a responsibility, I know that's a responsibility that the Alberta Party is willing to take on. And it's again in our policy very specifically about how we can do this.
The Alberta Party Policy Committee agrees with Glenn. I'm on the Economic Policy Committee, and the Health Policy Committee is taking the same approach where the solutions and the details that we're going into are no net increase to the funding going to the specific set of policies. When it comes to healthcare, the Alberta Party approach is really a focus on prevention, and we've all highlighted on this need for integration. So prevention happens within education, like Glenn said, and so that's the approach that our policy committee has taken to healthcare, is to look at it from when you're born and all the way to becoming a senior. One piece I can add to this discussion is that there's been new approaches taken in the healthcare industry across the world that are actually leveraging what the Japanese car companies have done to become so successful, and it's called a Kaizen model. And this model really is representative of who the Alberta Party is, so I think that it could be something that we could look into, because what they do is they listen to everyone from the janitor to the CEO. They're expected to be looking for constant efficiencies within the processes so that they can be as streamlined as possible. So they're starting to do this in Vancouver, and they've seen success in the US in saving money in the healthcare system. But for me, that doesn't represent an actual savings, because then that money can be used should stay within the healthcare system to provide more services. Thank you.
So we get a minute to talk about the healthcare. It's a big subject, and it's only a minute. What I'd like to say is that I very much agree with what has been said here, obviously, and I'd like to just add a couple of points. One is that the first step is to try to find those efficiencies, and as Tammy said, the frontline workers, the people there, we need to listen to them. We need a leader of this party, and we need a leader of government that will actually go into the hospitals and say, "You work for me. Tell me how I can improve your job. Tell me how we can find efficiencies and how I can clear the path to make that work." That's, I think, is very important. Having run a publicly traded company, and I forgot to mention this earlier, $500 million enterprise that I ran, I went and listened to people on the front line, and we learned a lot. And I think you'd be surprised at what the premier of this province would learn if he went into the hospitals and the healthcare units and asked those questions. And we need to be perceived to be doing that. Now, having said all that, Carol and I were together at the policy conference, and we added the idea that we needed to have a replacement for the crisis that we now have in the family doctor. We need to have a new designation. We need to have something that people can have a direct person to talk to about their personal health, an advocate for their health. And so whether it's a lesser position in the medical services or whether it's more family docs, we need something there. There's a crisis in that, and we need to talk about it. The second thing is that I'll set aside the emergency services, because I think that's a whole separate issue, and that's a crisis too. But I think the crisis that we don't talk about is we have a diagnosis and triage crisis. The world has moved on. There's a different way of doing diagnosis. If you want to know about it, go to the Cleveland Institute. The way they do it there is incredible. It's world class. It draws people from all over the world, and I don't see any reason why we can't, with our capital base and wealth in this province, do the same thing. So I think triage and diagnosis will save lives, and it will get rid of a lot of spinning our wheels in the system. And so those are points that I'd like to add. Thank you very much.
The question is, there is a large demographic voting population between the ages of 18 and 25 that is ignored by political parties. How would you reach this demographic of our population?
I'm already working very hard to reach this demographic of our population. I'll give you a few specifics. I've been meeting with the graduate students associations, and in September we're trying to plan a big listen across campus that'll be linked by technology. I've also identified some great youth that I have met through the work that I do in Calgary for a group called Teen Voice and some other groups, and they've been inspired by the Alberta Party, and they're the team that is working on increasing youth engagement in the Alberta Party. They're developing the strategy, and because in Alberta Party there is no kids table for youth, everybody has a leadership role to play. And our party has identified and embraced the fact that we aren't in a position to actually have all the ideas and the answers to plan the future for youth. So we're getting them involved on the ground up. We have the youngest constituency association president in our Camrose constituency. I think she's 20. And the 3 executive on that board adds up to their ages just over 60-something. So I think the Alberta Party really is attractive to youth. I hope so. And we'll just continue moving forward with that.
Thanks, Tammy. This is one of those, you shout out number 11 and everybody knows what you're talking about. We actually talked about this in Red Deer last time. And on my vision for implementation, I'm proposing that we actually have a separate and distinct council for youth. And what I'm proposing is that we create a mechanism of state that makes politics relevant to youth and youth relevant to politics. The reason that I believe that they're not engaging is because it means nothing in their life. So the question is can we make it important to their life? And what I'm specifically proposing is to have a council of government that gives kids from the, and I say use the word kids, I should say young adults, from the age of 10 to 25, and let them have 3 votes. First vote would be their relevant, almost schoolyard representative. The second one would be a regional representative. And the third vote would be for 3 seats in what I'm proposing to be a second house of government. That second house is innovative, it's bold, it's different. But if a Senate is good for the national government, I would suggest it should be good for Alberta. And so what I'm proposing is a mechanism by which the kids can vote for someone that would represent them, and when they have issues in their schoolyard and their lives, they actually have someone that they can go to. That person can go up the ladder to someone that's actually in government, and I would suggest it's probably only a 2-year term because you don't want to take up too much of their lives, but actually make their interests and their concerns part of what we look at. So obviously all that needs to be fine-tuned, but I think that that is the kind of bold innovation, political innovation, that I would propose that the Alberta Party embraces. Thank you very much.
We know that this generation that's being talked about there, 18 to 25, has a very different way of interacting with the world, really. But part of that is their connection to social media, and I think the Alberta Party has done a really good job in terms of connecting with young people using social media. I think we've also done a really good job in having an open door, saying, come on in, we have meaningful tasks for you that you can contribute and be a part of this party. I think so often that young people come in, and I remember this myself, when you start off in a party, it's like, well, you know, you can go put up some signs, and then if you're really lucky, you get to go and be a scrutineer. And here, we actually, in this party, invite people to come in and take up meaningful roles and be an integral part of the organization. And I think we have to continue to promote that as why the Alberta Party is different. And I guess the third thing I want to say on that, which is equally important, is that it is the different way that we do things that actually I believe will be attractive to that particular group of folks. They have meaningful input on all levels, and particularly on policy. I think that's absolutely critical that we maintain that open door policy and keep people bringing their ideas. This demographic research shows want to not just be consulted, i.e. what do you think, but actually want to be involved hands-on. We're already doing that, and we just need to let everybody know that we're going to continue to do that.
You know, one of my favorite movies is based on the premise that if you build it, they will come. I would suggest to you that if they build it, they will come. And this is how I see the Alberta Party reaching out to engage the demographic we're talking about, of those, I believe, under 30. And I'd suggest that, based on my experience, it's not enough to just invite them in occasionally so that we can hear from their perspective. This is about meaningful, authentic engagement in the develop of policy and the party, which means, like we've talked about, there is no kids' table in the Alberta Party. It's about as much engagement as you choose to take on, as much responsibility as you wish to have, is yours, because that's not separated by age. And while it might be separated by experience, there's much more for me to learn from somebody that's under 25 than I would suggest to people in my own age demographic when it comes to leadership. And this is based on my experience of brought in youth councils at a community level, trying to engage youth councils at a Rural Alberta Development Fund or at the Urban Municipalities Association. And while it's a fantastic idea, and I absolutely like this concept of having local elections to build people to bring forward their perspective, and I think that's well worth exploring, Randy. That's a fantastic idea. It also begins with having them help design the process. And so a recent example was a conversation we had in Red Deer, I'm not sure, last night, the night before, 2 weeks ago, a month ago, something like this. And the conversation was actually with the past president of the Student Councils Association of Alberta. And he was talking about how he was asked to consult on the Premier's Council for the Economy, and how thankful he was for that opportunity to not only be listened to, but he's quoted twice in the report, because his perspective was genuine and authentic. And that's the kind of engagement the Alberta Party is offering to those from any gender, any ethnicity, any background, and any age that wish to engage in building this new democratic ideal for the future of this province. And I believe that the youth will come because they're going to help build it, and their home is here because it will resonate with them, because they understand the needs.
Okay. It says that the party has a diverse array of political views and political backgrounds, and that this may prove to be challenging in terms of setting policy, which can find broad support in a party with Albertans. How will you address this challenge?
Well, again, I'm going to have to default to my experience. Over the past number of years, I've been involved with a group called Welcoming and Inclusive Communities. And we've traveled the province, actually, once again, talking to the citizens about what they're looking for when they come to a new community, whether that community is a neighborhood in a large city, or whether that's typically, as we're known, as a redneck, blue-collar, small, rural community in Alberta. And what we found is commonality. Often when people have, especially new immigrants or temporary foreign workers, folks that are recently part of this new ethnic demographic of Alberta, are the primary volunteers in our communities. They're the ones that are coming to build a new future for themselves and their family and are looking for ways to be engaged. And what I've learned is that the leader's role, not unlike a mayor's role or the chairman of a board, is to set the safe ground that you can have those tough conversations within. And you invite people to the table that don't share your perspective or your opinion, so that you can have real conversations about what it takes to build. And based on those conversations, people of various ethnic backgrounds will come to the table and engage if it's authentic, and if we're willing to listen and then implement what we've heard, because we have an understanding of what it takes to build a community that's holistic and inclusive. In my small community, we celebrate Canada Day by having something called the Fun Festival, where we come out and we invite all the various ethnic backgrounds to put on display in our town square the food of their country of origin, the clothing, and some history lessons. And that's turned into one of the largest ethnic fairs in our region, because we decided to celebrate our diversity rather than keep it under, keep it hidden and in the back rooms like so often happens, and welcome different people to our community, because that builds a much more holistic fabric. And I believe that's reflective of the new urban Alberta, and it's also reflective of the new worldly Alberta that we're building in spite of our current government not willing to engage necessarily.
Diversity is a piece of that I'm very passionate about. I've been working around diversity issues at Mount Royal University since I arrived there in 1996. What I've learned from that experience is that it's really important to create the right atmosphere that people feel that there's something there that is of interest and that it's safe to go to. I saw that in particular in terms of setting up a positive space initiative at Melroy University, where we had to do a lot of work just to get people feeling that this was in fact a real initiative and that it was going to be around for a while. I think we need to translate that same kind of idea that we got to build bridges, but we got to recognize that when we build bridges, not everybody's necessarily going to come immediately, because we have to also build trust. Building trust takes time. I think we need to find people who will come in and be part and learn what the Alberta Party is about and see how inclusive we are, and then be able to go out and bring other people in and become part of our party. I think we have a real advantage in the sense that this party is so devoted to inclusiveness, and that it already is modeling inclusivity and not just talking about it. So to me, I think we already have a really good start in terms of drawing those folks in and then talking about the success stories and going out and bringing more people in. I think it's really at a grassroots level that we're going to be able to do that, and it will take some time, but it's time well spent.
Thanks, Lee. This is an issue that I honestly struggle with. And the reason I struggle with it is because when I look at Alberta, and let me say it very clearly, we're just a bunch of immigrants that have come here from all over the place, and we're different shapes, different sizes, different colors, and frankly, I don't see people as being ethnically different. I don't see that, and I look at the businesses that I've been in, and in the hotel business, and there's they call it Patel Inc. because there's so many South Asians that are in that, but I don't see them as being different, and so I just see them as maybe having, there isn't even a uniform perspective that they have. So I think Alberta is the place where the people that have come here, like my grandparents, 4 generations ago, and people that have come here more recently, we just come here to find our own way. To find our place in the sun and unfortunately in the cold. And, but we come here to be individuals. Now, having said all that, I kind of look at our ethnic diversity is really just the immigrants and the people that were here before. And the people that were here before are the First Nations. And I have to tell you, I've got a lot of friends on the Blood Reserve south of Lethbridge. And it's very cool to ask them. And I asked them one day, where do your stories tell you you're from? And where did you immigrate from to come here? And they said, we're here. We've always been here. We don't know of anywhere we've been anywhere other than here, and we were just here. And I thought, isn't that marvelous? That these are the true Albertans. And so when I think of ethnic diversity, I just think of that we need to learn a new respect for what that culture has to give to us. And I think that Alberta is the one place, because we were the last place in North America to be colonized by the invaders, if I may put it that way, the indigenous cultures are still quite strong. And we need to respect them, we need to learn from them, and we need to have our arms go out to them and say, we want to understand the gifts that you have to give to us. And if I think that, in my family, just one quick thing is, my wife's parents, her father is from South Asia. He's Muslim, so my wife has a brother that's Muslim, and he married a Jewish girl. So their kids are both Muslim and Jewish, and then my brother-in-law, his father-in-law was Buddhist from southern Alberta, and it's completely invisible. The one thing that we need to reconcile is we have tremendous things that we can learn from the indigenous communities. They know more about the environment. They have a love for this land that we don't understand. And I would say that the one issue in terms of our ethnic diversity is that we really need to reach out and understand and respect. Thank you very much.
Can I hear the question again, because there was a policy piece at the end of it?
The question was that the party contains within it a diverse array of political views and political backgrounds, and this may prove challenging in terms of setting policy which can find broad support in the party with Albertans. How will you address this challenge?
I'm hearing that differently. I'm not hearing that as the diversity question So maybe I'll try and answer the policy piece of that question. I think what I've discovered as I'm speaking with Albertans is that there's many ideas out there in Alberta from a policy perspective whose time has come. And it is getting harder and harder to differentiate ourselves on policy because we see the Premier's Council report being released, and there's Alberta Party policy within it. We hear the other leadership candidates now using the Alberta Party language of decentralizing decision-making, being more open and transparent, of listening. So I don't think it's going to be very difficult to unify the diversity that exists within our party from a spectrum perspective, because Albertans are on the same page, and Albertans are moderate and centrist and want a balanced approach. There was even an article in the Calgary Herald the other day that said to the Wild Rose, if they want to form government, then they need to move to the center. Well, we're here and we own it, and we're the only party that's building into our DNA these foundations and these principles, so we're the only party that's going to be able to deliver on a policy platform because we're going to have a relationship with Albertans. So I hope that answers your question.
This question is in regard to the urban-rural split in Alberta, and it is, how should the relationship between the provincial government and Albertans' two big cities be changed?
Well, there were two parts to that question. One is about an urban-rural divide, which I think we have to work strenuously to dispel the myth of. We have far more in common as Albertans than the rural-urban divide suggests. In terms of the relationship to the big cities, I think that certainly we want to be attuned to some of the demands that have been placed on the larger urban centers. And particularly, I think that we need to ensure that they have the kinds of resources that they need to be able to meet the demands that come with being a big city. I don't believe that that necessarily is a competitive kind of situation. That, again, it's about finding the commonality that exists between urban and rural communities and being able to ensure that we work towards those. So I'll leave it at that. Oh, you going over here?
I think that the province is not divided. I mean, as soon as you start dividing people, I think it's a bad thing. And I don't think the province is divided. I think that there are different strengths in different areas. I mean, I think there's, rural Alberta is even made up of, there's the agricultural areas. There's, southern Alberta has different agricultural basis than, central Alberta. Northern Alberta is different again. And then you have, the rural oil services, which is different again. And then you have Edmonton, which is different than Calgary in terms of what it is. I think that, again, under the idea of what's our vision for implementing the policies, I think what I am proposing is that we deeply respect the opportunity for the local communities to develop a plan and a strategy for their own growth and for their position in the economic sun and their position of creating the kinds of communities that they want. And those urban communities will be different than the rural communities by their decision, not by our decision. And so again, that's that decentralization that Tammy spoke of. Like, let's give them the power. Let's engage them. Let's empower them. And let's enable them. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is that as much as it's great to talk about each one of those levels, I think we need to add one on top. And that is, I think we need to consider the Edmonton-Calgary urban complex, if I may put it that way. To make our province world class, we have 2 million people. 2 million people, actually a little over 2 million people that are in urban settings in this province. We need to tie them together. And we need to have an urban strategy which combines those two things together. Rather than divide, let's put them together. I think a cornerstone of that is a high-speed train from downtown to downtown. And I would like to propose that we have a single international airport that high-speed train stops at, so that we can enhance our overseas connections. And I don't know the details of how we do that, but that's what all the discussion is about. And then we can talk about having a system, a hub, if you will, of public transportation that emanates out of those central cores.
I think using the LRTs that are in place, supplementing it with monorails and a track system that's on a track system and buses. And let's talk about how we get people away from their cars. Because if we can structure things so that you don't have to have that second car, that is like a real increase in your salary in this province. So that's kind of my basic suggestions, that we respect people, and then we add on that extra complex of a combined metroplex. Thank you very much.
Can I hear the question again? I'm sorry.
How should the relationship between the provincial government and Alberta's two big cities be changed?
Oh.
That's not the same
Not the
question.
question?
That's not the same question. That's a good question.
Sorry. Well, okay. I'll just talk.
I do believe that's the one I read previously.
No.
Am I correct?
No.
It's okay.
You had a rural divide, the divide between rural and urban?
It's okay. I'll just answer what I think
That
the
was
question
first part.
is.
This is the second question. How should the relationship between the provincial government and Alberta's two big cities be changed?
I'm going to answer the rural and urban divide question. I just wanted to share with you some things that I've seen on the campaign trail that give real signs that, like Lee said, that this is a myth. When I went to see Joe Anglin, he's an expert on these land use bills, and he was giving a presentation in a small central Alberta community, Lucana, and there were landowners coming from far and wide to hear what he had to say about these bills. And the story that I remember the most was that there was this older farmer gentleman, and his concern about the bills wasn't his property rights being impinged upon. He was worried about the fact that electricity costs were going to increase, so low-income families in Red Deer might not actually be able to afford to pay their electricity bills. And this just really spoke to me, because this said to me, Albertans do believe we're all in this together, and they don't see this divide. And if you have a provincial government that also sees a vision for a team Alberta, we can move our province forward to work together. The other comment I'd like to make is I think the election of Mayor Nenshi also shows that we are moving forward on this, because the people who voted for him, the ones that I know, are concerned about urban sprawl and care about our agricultural lands. Chelsea back there filming, you can have a very passionate conversation with her about this, and she's from an urban community. So we're on the right path, and I think if we elect an Alberta Party government, we'll get all the way there.
Thank you. Boy, would I like to have answered that question first. I had said in my opening comments, I referred to this myth of the rural-urban divide that Chima and Naheed Nenshi and I and others were engaged in when we first came up with this idea of the rebirth of the Alberta Party. So I'm going to answer this question in two parts. Yes, it is a myth about this rural-urban divide. And primarily because of this. When government is making decisions, often the first question that people ask is, how is that going to affect me and my family? And then next it becomes, well, what about my neighbors? What about my neighborhood, my community, my town, my city, my province, this federal government, and my country? So this rural-urban myth is a matter of scale, I would suggest, more than anything else. When we're talking good planning, it doesn't matter if we're doing good planning on a province-wide level or good planning in my neighborhood to ensure that we understand that my home is not going to be located next to a large industrial complex. And again, it's a matter of scale. And those are common concerns across this province in my experience. So I believe that we take it from the position of it's more in common than separates us. However, it's about systems, because the city of Calgary and the city of Edmonton, representing over 2/3 of the population in this province, do have matters of scale that people in smaller urban communities simply don't have. And so it is a matter of the systems that you need to ensure that we can replicate what has to happen on a larger scale and deliver it more efficiently in order to be successful. I would also suggest to you that it is a power relationship between the provincial government and those that we've elected to represent us at a municipal level. Matter of fact, Mayor Nancy and I had this conversation just 2 weeks ago. The power that the provincial government has is requiring municipalities of any size to have their hand out asking for grants, rather than devolve the authority to the local level where municipally elected leadership, who serve just as many citizens across this province as a provincial government does, can make decisions about resources, can make decisions about their own responsibilities, and are held accountable to that every 3 years. And so this is really a discussion about the relationship between municipalities and the provincial government. And it's a discussion that we need to have because we're not afraid of finding the answers, because ultimately it comes down to this in my mind. Citizens don't really care who's responsible for delivering what services. They don't know the boundaries on a map. That matters to the elected people. Citizens want good governance for a reasonable tax dollar and to understand the expected outcomes. That means that our government should be able to have that conversation about good governance for reasonable tax dollars, and let's worry about the outcomes. And that's the discussion that I believe we have to have between municipalities and the provincial government. Thank you.
Okay, the next question. How would you encourage the growth of a green economy and balance that financially with Alberta's budget?
Alberta's budget, as in the government's budget, I assume.
I'm only reading the question. You may answer it as you please.
I get to make up the question. We need to put up that sign that says under new management, and we need to get the environment viewed not as a single silo, but as an issue in everything we do. My view is that there's two things. When you say that when I propose that we all say together that the people on the planet are the two things that matter the most, that means that both of those issues, our humanity and our environment, need to go into every discussion that we have. And so whether that's on education or whether that's on industry, we need to engage a discussion on the environment and how are we going to become leaders in being more cautious with our environment. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to go get industry engaged. And we need to talk to them and say, as I said earlier, we are going to help encourage your industry to be successful. You need to help us create Alberta as a position of leadership. Now, and part of that is that we need to have, and I say this with great emphasis. We need to have world-class regulations, and we need to have world-class enforcement. And I think that the existing government has fallen behind on that. And so we need to show the world that we need to change that, and we need to show industry that it is in their best interests. I went to I think most of us were at a conference in Edmonton, Alberta Party conference, where we talked about how I'm going to call it oil mining has the potential of coming under great distress because of world opinion is turning against it. And so that conference basically said, we need to show the world that we are changing the way we view the environment. And it's very important that we hold up that sign under new management so the world gets to see that. And so we need to act very quickly to get the industry on board to change the way we do things. Now, the question is how are we going to reconcile that with the budget coming out of the Alberta government? And I think the answer to that is probably more complex than I can answer right now. But I do not see it immediately as an issue that's a monetary issue. I think the first question is we need to fundamentally change the way we think about the environment. It's not a separate and distinct silo. It's what we all have to do together. And I think we need to encourage everyone to roll up their sleeves and make it all work. Thank you. Now, who gets it next?
During the federal election, I heard one candidate talk about creating competitive advantage similar to what the Canadian diamond industry did. This really resonated with me because this is the opportunity that we do have in Alberta, and this is the opportunity that the Alberta Party recognizes, is that we can create a competitive advantage in the world on transitioning our hydrocarbon-based economy to a more green economy. And so our policy committee is working very hard on coming up with the balance of incentives and catalytic funding that might be required in order to make this happen. So I think all I can add to what Randy has said is that it's important and it's a priority, and that we're doing the research necessary to move our oil and gas economy to a more diverse economy that includes a green mix.
Well, thank you. As I'd said earlier, we have to begin from a place of understanding that the economy, energy, and the environment are not three different discussions. I'm also a proponent of the free market economy. I believe that the solutions will be found in private enterprise if they're given clear direction and incentives as how to reach there. Now, I'll explain that a little bit. A person that's working with me on my leadership campaign has recently published a book. And in this book, he gives an examination of the energy industry, and he proposes a strategy to help us develop a new energy economy for Alberta. And in that, what he suggests, his name's Peter Silverstone, what he suggests is that business has to make decisions that are in the best interest of their shareholders so that they can return a profit. What business needs to know is the regulatory framework that they're going to work within. So, for example, if we wanted to lower greenhouse gas emissions, then if a business decided that they were going to lower greenhouse gas emissions, and government put the incentives in place, as greenhouse gas emissions come down, so would the royalties they pay as an offsetting credit for doing the work. If they decided to do upgrading in the province of Alberta, then they would pay lower royalties because we're going to collect taxes from the new business and the new growth. So the idea here is that the businesses can choose not to do that if it's not in their best interest, but those that want to make a competitive decision can. Now, I'm not saying that's the answer. What I'm suggesting to you is that we have the conversation that allows us to fully discuss what we like to call the triple bottom line, because it's about energy, the economy, and people. And these decisions can't be made independent of one another. And when it comes to the budgetary question, again, it's about thinking differently with the money we have. And it's not about taking money out of the economy as much as we can generate more money in our economy by opening up the regulatory framework that we can understand how businesses can grow and be successful here in Alberta. And my final comment would be this, that the Alberta Party truly understands the need to have these tough conversations and instill the idea that the free market economy will find the answers. Research is available in this province that will help us transition to that next energy economy. But along the way, it's not going to be a single focus. The focus will be on, as Randy has said, people and the planet. I would add a third piece, which is prosperity. And that's the future of the Alberta in the 21st century that the Alberta Party and I believe all four of us share. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to change it up again. We're going to have... Sorry. I'm sorry.
That was not a problem.
I'm just looking at our time, and we're going to have two questions after you answer, and I will take managerial prerogative and cut people short because our time is cutting short. So keep that in mind.
As Glenn said, there's a lot of consensus up here around the kinds of things that we need to do around the environment. Totally, I agree that it's a matter of seeing things differently, and that it's a triple bottom line we have to be concerned with. I think the piece that we're missing here is that we have some really powerful players already on the academic side. We have the University of Alberta and we have the University of Calgary, who also are doing really important work in terms of understanding how we can rethink what most parties position as an either-or dichotomy. You either choose the jobs or you choose the environment, and we know that that's not true. We have academic research that shows how to do this. We need, I think, as a government, and what we can do is facilitate those conversations between the three sectors, between our partners in the oil and gas industry, between the academic research that's already being done, and government. And I think there's an important role that we can play in supporting and facilitating those kinds of interactions.
As I indicated, we have two more questions. The educational funding is currently being mismanaged by the Alberta government and the school boards. This is the statement on the question. The question, therefore, is, would you endorse a forensic audit of the Department of Education and school boards and hold them accountable?
Who's going first?
Tammy.
Yay. Can you just repeat that last? Endorse a forensic audit of what
The
specifically?
education funding is currently being mismanaged by the Alberta government and the school boards. Would you endorse a forensic audit of the Department of Education and school boards and hold them accountable?
Okay, so you are saying that the school boards are mismanaging the funds. In my experience, on knowing people from different school boards, I'm not of the opinion the funds are being mismanaged. But if there is no current audit process going on, then and the Alberta Party, we embrace transparency. So I guess then if there was evidence it was being mismanaged, I would support an audit. I have an accounting background.
My short answer is yes. I would support a open process for accountability. And there are funds being mismanaged, but I believe it's being mismanaged by the current provincial government, not necessarily by the school boards. We keep getting top-down decisions acted. For example, teacher salaries that were negotiated between the government and the teachers and agreed to in good faith through the negotiating process. And then the funds didn't come to the school boards, who then had to make decisions to implement. And then the blame came to the school boards, and that's simply wrong. By having these organizations, whether it's a nonprofit society representing literacy in Alberta or a group working to affect disadvantaged children, putting these unaccountable boards in place as a buffer between the decision makers in the provincial government and the people affected by that is not a good way to govern. But I also believe that openness and transparency is the cornerstone to democracy. And we're already doing this at a municipal level, where your budgets are transparent and they're seen and they're challenged. Recently in Calgary, challenged quite vociferously, and you elected a new mayor as a result of that, I would suggest. But my point is this: there's nothing to hide. Then open up the books, and then we can have real conversations in a democratic society about decisions that need to be made to get the teacher in front of the student so that we can learn and not be embroiled in this argument about power based on budgets and responsibilities. It has to be about getting back to that dynamic. How do we encourage our students to learn? How do we give the teachers the resources they need to be successful?
Thank you very much.
Would not necessarily say that the school boards are mismanaging funds, but I definitely believe that, as Glenn said, transparency is what's necessary. And so if it's a forensic audit that somebody thought was necessary, why not? However, I think we need to why single out only education? I think we need to look at the full range of government programming and understand whether we're getting the best bang for our buck. I think we need a full accounting of where all the money has gone over the last little while. So while education may be a specific case, I think it points to a more general need to understand how our budgets are being spent and making certain that we're getting the best dollar, best value for the dollars that we're already spending.
Thanks, Nick. I'm going to repeat the question. The question was, they're wasting money. Would we support a forensic audit and hold people to account? My wife asked me to answer these questions very directly, so I'm going to do it. I do not agree with that. And the reason for that, and I'm sorry whoever asked the question that I don't agree with it, is because I think what we really need is a truth and reconciliation. Let's open up the books, as has been said. Let's find out the mistakes that were made. But as soon as you start going after those people, and we've seen it in much more dire things in South Africa and what have you, as soon as you say, we will attack you, then everything goes underground. So let's say we have made some mistakes and we're going to approach it differently. And this goes again to the, how do we actually implement change? And that's where we need a platform that's on the internet so that people will openly say, here's where we made mistakes and here's where we can do better. And let's open it up to everyone, including people that are at those levels and are the teachers. And Alberta education is successful because we've gone to the teachers. Let's open it up and let's do it in a positive way. The Alberta Party is not an angry, negative party. If that's the vote that you want to cast, I think there's other parties out there that you can go to. We are a positive party that wants to move forward and not retrace our steps backwards. Thank you very much, though.
government bureaucracy, especially politicians, appear to have better and much higher super gold-plated pension plans than the average electorate. The average electorate generally has no pension plan, but said electorate who is paying for these political pension plans. What are your thoughts on chopping and eliminating these political pensions?
Well, I come from a position of having a very public record on this, and I believe that elected office should be public service. We've lost the honor of the people that put their names forward, I would suggest, and how we even look at them as from a citizen's perspective because of these benefits and bonuses that are not available to the common everyday citizen of this country. So we have to start from a position of reasonableness, and it should reflect the service that you're giving to your community, either at a local level, at a provincial level, or a federal level. It should be open, it should be transparent. We should also ensure, and this is part of Alberta Party policy, that if you're going to enact a benefit to your MLA, then it shouldn't take effect until after the next election. We've done this in my home municipality of Hinton. When they vote themselves a raise at our municipal government, it doesn't take effect until after the next election. And then people get an opportunity to weigh in through the ballot box as to whether or not they believe that's reasonable and hold those people accountable to their actions. So it should be reflective of the general idea that this is public service, not a gold-plated plan. It should be reflective of the need in Alberta, and it should take effect after the next election so that MLAs will be held accountable to the decisions they make before it becomes in effect.
This might be a rare moment of discord. I certainly agree that the benefits should be commensurate with the kind of service that's being provided. There shouldn't be extraordinary accommodations made by any stretch of the imagination. At the same time, we need to be able to ensure that those people who want to be a part of public life can participate in public life, and that we need to make certain that it's not going to be entirely detrimental. So while I would totally concur that we don't want to see people voting raises that they get immediately and that they should come after any public election, that it only makes sense. At the same time, we need to remember that we've got to recruit people into doing these jobs as well.
Thanks, Lee. I'm kind of going to line up a little bit with Lee on this one, I think we need to be very careful. I'm attracted to the Alberta Party because it's positive, because it looks to the future, not to the not backwards. And we have a problem with government spending. It is uncontrolled. It's out of control. And there is a temptation to pit the electorate against the bureaucracy and say that the bureaucracy are the bad people. They are not bad people. They are good people, and they're going to be part of our solution in how to get government spending under control. It is way more important that we control government spending than it is for us to start cutting back the existing plans that they have. The numbers are completely disproportionate. And most importantly for me, is that we need to be an inclusive party, not an angry party. We need to be a positive party, and we need to be a party that drives towards real solutions for all Albertans, including those that are in our bureaucracy and those that choose to serve in government. So what I'm trying to say is, in summary, focus on the big issues, keep people together, keep people positive, and let's find solutions together rather than castigating groups of people and saying they're the bad people. Again, there's other parties that you can go to, vote for them. This party is positive. We need to all come together to find the solution for government spending. Thank you very much.
The only thing that I have to add is I've done some research into this, and the thing that I've discovered is that there's such a lack of transparency with government salaries and their pensions, and it's so complicated. And as you're trying to even figure out what we actually will be making and what the pensions are, nobody can understand it. It's gone through so many iterations, I think, in order to try and not disclose what the reality is. So I just think that there's an opportunity there for the Alberta Party to really add the clarity that's required to know what are the salaries and the pensions for our MLAs.
All right, well, we want to hear from our candidates, wrap up 3 minutes, so summarize the history of the world and their entire position in 3 minutes.
I promise I won't tell a joke this time. First of all, thank you to everyone for being here, for sitting patiently, for actually listening. I think that in itself is a credit to democracy. I want to say that I truly believe that the winds of change are starting to blow in Alberta in the political realm. I think that Albertans look at the existing government and they have lost contact, they've lost confidence in it, and I think they're looking around. I think the Wild Rose has identified that. I think they have freed up that relationship that Albertans have had, voting time and time again for the Progressive Conservative Party. But I also think that the Wild Rose has approached it from a perspective of being a dogmatic party with imported philosophies on a number of things. And I don't think that Albertans have a history of being dogmatic. I think that our history is about consensus. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier. We are just a bunch of immigrants that have come here to try to build a new life. And there was no context of a dogmatic religion or nation that came here to try to build a new place in their image. So that's why Albertans are not dogmatic. That's why they are about consensus. That's why we're about helping each other. And that's why I think ultimately that the Wild Rose is going to miss the mark. Now we have an opportunity. We've started talking about participation. We've started talking about a new way of doing government. And I think that I would like to say that it is imperative that we all do what we can to take that philosophy to its logical conclusion. That means to offer to the electorate the best possible alternative to government that we can. And I think it's very important that we do this, because if we are not successful in being all that we can be, the idea of participation and the idea of us all being involved is going to die on the vine, and no other party will pick it up and say, the Alberta Party, it didn't work for them, but I think we can do it. I think we have a historic mandate to do this in this province at this time with these people. And so I think that we all must roll up our sleeves and do something. And I think also, and I will say to you, that this party needs to do things differently. We need to do our democracy differently. And every time that we butt up against doing things in the old way, I think that we have to talk about that. And we have to say, we do need to do it differently, we need to do it correct, and we need to do politics not of self-service, but service to the public. And I will assure you that if you to choose me as your leader, I will talk about that. I'll talk about it openly. And so I'd like to wrap up by saying why I'm interested in this party being successful and the part that I'd like to play in it. As I look around the room and I look around this province, and I think to myself, in every woman there's great beauty, in every man there's a hero. And what we need to do as a party and we need to do as a province is to unleash that potential. And in order to do that, we need to engage them into our politics and engage them into our policies and allow them to prosper and be who they want to be. So anyways, I'd like to thank you for being here. I'd like to thank you for your interest in the Alberta Party, and I hope that we can all be successful. Thank you.
So this is what 21st century politics looks like, folks. It's engagement, it's asking questions, it's having politicians who want to be a part of the change, answer those questions, and to have us be engaged in conversation. This is the kind of change that the Alberta Party plans to bring to the entire province. This is not a one-off deal. This is how we do things. We are future-oriented. I like to think that this party is a party of the 21st century and that the other parties are still practicing what many people called old-style politics, what I just call 20th century politics. We are the vanguard of how things are going to be done in the future, and we know that because we see our other parties already taking up the very way that we talk about things. We know that people are talking about listening. We know that people are talking about engagement. Well, here's the thing. We're already doing it, and we're committed to continue doing it even once we achieve power. That's going to be a very hard kind of promise to keep, but I know that we're committed to doing that. That's part of the reason I wanted to put myself forward as a leader for this party. I believe that we need a fresh voice, someone who's coming at this from a different kind of perspective, who's going to be able to go out and talk to Albertans about the story of the Alberta Party and to be able to invite them to become part of the dream. We want to build a consensus. We need someone who's going to go out there and talk passionately and in a committed way about that story. I ask for your support on May 28th.
So thank you, Brian, for putting together a great event, and thanks to all of you for coming. I hope the one thing that you take away from this is I know what you come to a debate and you expect there to be a lot of disagreement amongst the candidates, but we are all on the page because we all have willingly given and sacrificed our lives to be of service to this party because we believe in the model that the founders of our party put into place and that we're building upon. So I hope that we've shown through the camaraderie and genuine respect that we have for one another that we are a different kind of party that is going to be able to do politics differently, and that we are the ones that will be able to build this trusting two-way relationship with Albertans and continue to listen to them. And we're the party that is going to use this balanced approach and develop a holistic and integrated set of policies that will move our province towards opportunities for wealth and health and happiness and meaningful work for all Albertans. So thank you for coming today, and I hope you'll participate in our leadership convention. And it's on May 28th, and it's going to be the best Alberta party in the province, so we hope to see you there. Thanks.
I'll begin my closing comments by thanking you for spending this glorious spring day in the sunshine, cramped up in a little room talking about politics, and retaking your citizenship back by choosing to engage in a new viable alternative for the future of our province. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this. I've been on an incredible journey. I've been in places I never thought I'd be, having conversations with people I never thought I'd meet. And I want to share one of those stories from the road, if you will, about this journey that I've been on, seeking the leadership and helping to build this new party. A number of weeks ago, I had the pleasure of having breakfast with Shane Koizen. I don't know if many of you know Shane, but you might remember him from the opening ceremonies of the Vancouver Olympics. He was that rotund fellow with the glasses and the neck beard that came up and shouted at us what an incredible country Canada was and is. He's a slam poet from Vancouver area. When I had breakfast with Shane a couple of weeks back, he shared with me another one of his poems, and this poem is called "This Is My Voice." And in that poem, for those of you that aren't aware of it, he defines politics. Politics coming from the Greek word meaning many, and kicks, a blood-sucking lump on your butt. He then goes on to explain, however, how grateful he is to be in Canada, where you can change government using a ballot rather than a bullet. And when you think about what people across the world are doing today to regain democracy and having to resort to the bullet to do so, it shows you what an incredible opportunity we have here in Canada and what an incredible responsibility we have here in Alberta to continue to lead the way to an improved democracy at the ballot box. And I'll leave this thought with you as well. If we use the tools of our opponents, are we any better? And it's not enough to win. We have to win without becoming that which we struggle against. We have to win without becoming that which we struggle against. And that's the option that the Alberta Party is offering Albertans in the next provincial election. A new democracy, a new way of doing politics, and a viable opportunity for change that I know Albertans across this province are yearning for. And in closing, I encourage you, talk to your friends and neighbors, help us build this party, take back our citizenship, and we become the Alberta for the 21st century that I know we all yearn to be. Thank you for your time.
Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much. Being here on elections, I love elections. I first got elected when I was 26. I thought I was doing pretty good. I thought it was very important, actually, and I was speaking at the Rotary Club, and I thought things went pretty well. I was driving home with my girlfriend that night, and I turned to her and I said, in the history of mankind, how many truly great orators do you think there have been? Expecting a positive response. She said, I don't know how many there's been, but there's one less than you think there is. What I know for sure, ladies and gentlemen, is there's 4 excellent communicators, 4 excellent leaders, 4 excellent Albertans who have the courage to stand up and offer themselves as leaders, and I think we would all be well served. I will tell you, I belong to a political party, as many of us do, and I admire anyone who's willing to take a stand and to try to make this a better place to live. So I have a huge respect for those who offer themselves, and I think the province of Alberta does not appreciate this diamond in the rough in an Alberta party that you have put together. And as the president of the Calgary Leadership Forum, I say on behalf of all our members, we feel well served by your being here and by the process that you've embarked upon. And we'll all be excited to see the outcomes on May 28th. And whoever it is, we're going to wish you congratulations in advance.